Everyone, thank you for coming to my talk. Now, I have some slides. I'm going to digress from them a little bit. But first of all, let me thank ETH Prague, let me thank the organizers for inviting me here. My first digression is about ETH Prague. It has a special place for me. I always feel energized when I come here. And last year, I was feeling rather down about Web3. I seemed to be drowning in hype from meme coins, etc. And I felt that, when I started working on Ethereum 10 years ago, there was this promise around public good and projects doing public good, and that this seems to have, I thought this, was disappearing. But when I come to conferences like this, then this really restores my faith. And there have been some good talks today, and there's some more tomorrow, talking about the types of projects that can help and do public goods and make a difference, make societal change. And ETH Prague, I feel, is particularly good, has always emphasized this, and I'm really grateful that they have. That's the first digression over. All right. I'm going to skip through some of these because we don't have a huge amount of time. But the Web3 fundamentals, you know these things. I mean, these are the base. This is the context that we're going to be talking about, that our AI agents have as the context. So we have decentralization, we have permissionless architecture, we have tokens. We have tokens that can allow incentivization of people in the system. Of course, this has led to DeFi, NFTs, DAOs. DAOs, when I started out, I was really excited about DAOs. I felt that there was a bit of an emphasis on the organization there. So people were trying to work out how can we create an organization that has some legal meaning. And certainly we saw this with the DAO, and when that all went wrong in many ways, there was a lot of legal dispute, and the whole idea of code is law was brought into question. But what I think we are going to move on to now is really new ways that DAOs can work, and I'm going to be talking about that. So, autonomous agents, simply software entities that will have defined goals and they can act independently. They can be very simple, they can be just based on simple rules, or they can be using very complex AI models to make decisions. So some of the things they do at the moment, pattern recognition, etc. Also, translation, we see how good they are with language. We're all very familiar with large language models. But they do have limitations. They may not understand context too well. Ethics is going to be a very important point that we're going to be thinking about as well. But we're seeing them being used very widely. We see trading bots. I was recently a judge at a hackathon, and pretty much half of the entries that came along were people writing a trading bot using a large language model to make decisions. So there's a lot of them about. So we put these two things together, we get Agentic Web3, we get agents on blockchain. This means that these agents can be persistent, they can have economic incentives, they can be using tokens. There's transparency about the way that they are working. And we can have some verifiable outcomes. We can have some transparency and verify that the outcomes are what we would expect, because we can look at the smart contract code that is being used. This can feed into DAOs. They can help with governance. Let me move on. I've got quite a lot to get through. So some of the public good applications that we see, we have this idea that for it to be regarded as public goods, you have to have the concept that if someone is taking something from this, then they're not taking the whole thing. So, for example, a concrete example is something like a lighthouse, where that provides navigational information for ships, but each ship is not taking the whole lighthouse. Other ships can also use it. And there's also things about non-exclusion as well. You're not excluding other ships there. We have the concept of the tragedy of the commons, the fact if you make something available free or very cheaply, then that people will use that and try to take all of that, and it can then lead to that being held by many few people. The what we can't do now, though, with things like tokenization, with reputation systems, is to try to provide incentives to give a fairer allocation of common goods. There are some great projects around the environment as well, so monitoring what is actually happening there and trying to show that if companies are claiming some environmental impact, but actually doing some greenwashing, that that can be exposed. There's a lot of work going on in decentralized science as well. Many projects there. Also public health. Interesting, this very much then brings in the concept of privacy and the importance of privacy. If we're talking about health data, patient data, we have to be careful about the privacy. Okay. Other things, so yeah, regenerative finance became a hot topic maybe last year, the year before. The idea that, yeah, we're doing these, we have projects that are doing public goods that are making some impact, and this can be verified there. We have the idea of tokenized incentives, so that whatever agents are doing this, or whatever humans are involved, we can incentivize them and by the use of tokens, which are easy to create and configure. Okay. All right. The other point, the impact measurement, as I say, we may have a project that wants to show and wants to promote some climate target. But there is a difficulty then of, how can we be sure that is happening? How do we know that there's not greenwashing going on? Then we can rely on, or we can use oracles. So we can then have something that we trust, that is a data source that can provide us information about what is really happening. And I think you'll have, if you were here this morning, there was a good talk about how UN and UNICEF are using DeepIn, and they're getting data about schools and school connectivity to the internet. And so that gives a huge amount of data that can then be used to help with the decisions that governments and agencies need to make. So we've got these wonderful technologies. We've got Web3, we've got AI, Agentic Web3, these autonomous agents. So what's the problem? Why can't we just put them all together and get on with it, and life's going to be wonderful? Well, scalability. Now, everybody at every blockchain conference forever has been talking about scalability, and there's a couple of aspects about this that I want to talk about. So the one that I mention here actually is perhaps one of the least important, because yes, blockchains are limited in their throughput, but that is something that I think we are solving to some extent. Certainly that is improving. But another aspect of scalability brings me on to my second digression, which is around funding. So I'm interested in altruism and public goods. How do we actually fund these? And this has certainly changed, and we've got different ways of doing this. So if you have a project in Web3, you may get funding sort of through VC funding. That's a very common way to get funding for a project. But if your project is a public good, if it doesn't have a very well-defined or very large revenue stream, then you may not get that. And the VCs are probably going to be interested more in short-term economic gain than in something longer term, something that is going to benefit the community. So what are we left with if we don't have that route for funding? Well, we have things like grant allocations. We have projects that give grants to people. We have things like the Gitcoin grants. I don't know if this was mentioned and Vitalik was talking earlier, but he brought up this notion of what he called deep funding. And this is to try to overcome the problem that we have with grants, where they become very much a popularity contest. And if your project has a great marketing budget and can make it, give a very loud voice, then it's likely to get funding, much more than things that are maybe less popular, less sexy, maybe things that are quite complex to explain and not very obviously going to bring benefit. And the idea behind deep funding is that you can create a weighted graph showing the dependencies between projects and the actual impact that funding is going to then have. So it could be that there's some small project that, again, not very sexy, but it could make a huge difference to a network, which that can have a knock-on effect to the internet, and that could make a massive difference by funding that, rather than other projects that are better defined. So that is certainly something that I think is very interesting, and that graph, that weighted graph of dependencies, is going to involve a huge amount of data. And that is where it gets quite difficult for humans to get involved with that and to make decisions about what to fund and what is the best thing to fund, because they've got a mass of data and it's not going to be really obvious what is the best thing to do there. So that is where agentic agents can come in. That's what AI is good at. It's good at analyzing and handling large amounts of data. So that's one area where I think we can certainly get help. I'll just take a couple more points. So security, obviously very important. You need your contracts to be checked. Privacy, again, a theme. As Vitalik says, be a signal bro. It's very important that we preserve the privacy, because we don't know if you've got data that's going to be used by agents. We don't know how that is necessarily going to be used, so you need to be careful about the privacy. Other points, governance. So coming back to the DAOs, there are ways that DAOs can do governance. There's some very simple models. You can just issue a token with your DAO, and then each person that has a token can use that token to vote. But that can then lead to some wealthy people buy lots of tokens, and therefore they control the DAO. So there are many different ways of doing governance, and there's been some quite imaginative ways to do that. One that I've come across that I quite like is the idea of optimistic governance. And with optimistic governance, most of the decisions are just agreed upon. You just assume that they're going to be okay, otherwise that proposal wouldn't have been made. And so you just pass all of those. But there's then a easy veto. So if something shouldn't be agreed upon, then it's easy to veto that particular proposal. And this, I think, is an area where, again, agentic agents can be useful. So they can take the load off the people who are involved in DAOs by monitoring the mass of proposals and all of these votes, and allowing the optimistic governance to work quite efficiently. But then they can flag up things that perhaps should go to a vote and maybe be vetoed. A big problem that we're going to face is around regulation. As I was saying earlier, we have had the problem with the DAO. Legal frameworks about this and about the responsibility of agents is a topic that this is going to no doubt occupy lawyers for a long time. If we have an agent that makes a decision, and that decision has some real-world impact, some negative impact, then who is responsible for that? If that just is a piece of code that is running, do you blame the developer? You can't really blame the blockchain, can you? Are you going to blame the people who run nodes? So that's a difficult area. Okay, I'm going to move on. So where could this possibly go? So near term, I think we can have autonomous agents, and they can be running, doing whatever they're doing. Maybe there's going to be some altruistic aspect to that, but there's probably going to be some human oversight in there as well. Perhaps after that, we'll get more autonomous agents, so they will not have to have so much oversight. And this brings me onto the concept of incentives. We should be good at understanding incentives. With Web3, we've had to do this. We've had to build the protocols in such a way that they incentivize people to behave in a certain way and disincentivize people to do bad things. So we need to go through that process again when we are developing AI agents and how they are running to get the type of behavior that we want. when it comes to incentives, I think it's interesting to think, if we have an autonomous agent, and you incentivize that, well, how are you going to incentivize it? Maybe you're going to give it some tokens if it does some public good. So you could write your agent, your autonomous agent, so that it is rewarded if it then spends some of its sovereign, funds to do some public good. So that's possible. Or maybe you would give it access to certain data sets if it does some good as well. And agents would like some data, so they may benefit from that. Maybe you're going to do reputation. Maybe you're going to have some way of giving certain agents a higher reputation because they are using some of their funds to do public good. And then other agents that want to interact with that will see it has a higher reputation, therefore it may get more interaction. But all of those mechanisms for incentives have to be built by the people developing the agents. This is not going to happen accidentally. We have to be very active about this and make this part of how we develop agents. So that's why I say here that the call to action, that we need to build with a public good as a first principle here. So this has to be there from the start and not an afterthought, because it won't just happen accidentally. Okay. The other point about the incentives is that you may incentivize the agent to behave in a certain way, and perhaps they would be incentivized, for example, to fund things that would benefit the blockchain infrastructure, because that benefits them directly because they are using it. But what happens if there's a conflict between the incentives for the agents and the incentives for humans? What if there's a clash between those? How are we going to deal with that? And that is something we need to think about. So, in conclusion, I think there is a possibility by using autonomous agents that we can do different types of funding, we can do different types of public good funding, such as the deep funding, and make that practical, and have agents helping with the efficiency of that. This is just beginning, but it is changing very quickly. Look at how fast the LLMs have changed recently. But it is up to us. If you're building agents, it's up to us to build in these ideas and to make them altruistic to some extent. Yeah, I think that's most of what I want to say. I know we're a bit short of time, so what I think's best is if you have questions, if you want to come find me afterwards, and you can ask, and I'll answer your questions. If you're interested why my T-shirt seems upside down, you can ask me that as well. But I think this is a fascinating area. If you're going to be building agents, please do remember public good funding and build that in. And we've got very exciting times ahead of us. That's it. Thank you for your attention, everyone. Thank you.